My name is John Passfield, and the title of this reading will be Glenn Gould, Video 6, The Anthems. This is my novel, Glenn Gould, Light and Dark, a novel by John Passfield, and here's a summary on the back cover. Glenn Gould's life as a musician begins as a fairy tale. As his very first recording, the Goldberg Variations, skyrockets a young Canadian to the top of the music world as a must-see and must-hear concert pianist with sold-out performances all around the world. And then, at the height of his powers and his popularity, he makes a decision about his music and his life, which splits the music world right down the middle and remains controversial to this day. Well, I'll deal with that decision in other videos, but not in this one. This is about anthems. A national anthem is a statement of values and principles. When we sing a national anthem, we're making a statement about who we think we are as a society in terms of the standard of thought and deed which we have set for ourselves. It follows then that a personal anthem is the same, a statement of values and principles against which we can measure our personal thoughts and deeds. In the depths of our minds, these measuring devices, anthems, are expressed in imagery. In this novel, every word of which is a thought in the mind of the main character, Glenn Gould, there are 13 anthems of personal values and principles against which he is measuring himself and the people of his life. So for this video, in interest of brevity, I'll read 6 of them. Now, in the text, they don't have titles or headings, but I'll sort of label them as we go. So we'll turn to page 5 for the first one. And here it is. I call this the merry-go-round. Okay, so page 5. Suddenly, they were standing in the midst of a carnival. Right next to them was a whirling merry-go-round. The organ played the familiar circus tune. Now that's on page 5. We go to page 30 of Glenn Gould's thoughts. Let me just get it here for the next segment of this anthem. So that's 25 pages of imagery. So what's an anthem doing? It's measuring based on a standard everything else in Glenn Gould's mind. So 25 pages of imagery about Glenn Gould in his thoughts. Every 30 pages, well, I'm sorry, we're going from 5 to 30. Every 25 pages, a little item that is measuring these images, okay? So, here we are then. He watched as the old fellow watched. Surging horses, a unicorn, laughing children. The children for the next ride stood in line. So that's the second one. Okay, we leap to page 56. So from 30 to 56 will be 26 pages. And here's a third image. So measuring that many pages of images in the mind, of course, not in pages, but in thought. Oh, I get it, he finally said. I know what you want me to see. What goes around comes around, of course. Okay, now from 56 we go to 87. Okay, here it is for another little measuring device, another anthem segment. Yes and no, said the old fella. It's what you see and what you do not see. Watch carefully as the children come around. Okay, and then the last one is on page 115 after quite a lot more imagery in the mind of Glenn Gould. He watched intently as the children clambered on. Every child was on a unicorn when the music started to play. He watched most closely as the children came around. Well, he missed something. So it's not interpreting imagery. You're not wrong. You're interpreting it in terms of your own life, your own observations. But you might not have noticed some of the detail that would allow you to interpret a little more deeply. And that's what the old fellow is suggesting. Watch a little more closely next time. Well, the answer is in the journal, so I'm not going to give it here in terms of what he missed the first time. It's quite interesting, I think. Okay, God and music is my next topic. The next topic of the images in Glenn Gould's mind, the anthem being the images that measure the other images. So here we go. Who's recording do you think God was listening to as he was creating the universe? Just that. That's the first one. We go to 53. Page 53. For the next one. That's ridiculous. During creation, not one person recorded one note. Then we go to 82. After all those pages of images. So God was living in human time? Then we go to 110. God was not living in the world. God was living in eternity. This seems to be an argument. Then we go to 138. For the next image. So, does eternity not mean that all things have existence simultaneously? Okay, I'll read that last one again. Does eternity not mean that all things have existence simultaneously? So that's a little argument there, and it's an argument in the mind of Glenn Gould in an anthem which is monitoring all of the other imagery in the mind of Glenn Gould. So I'll just leave it at that. The Fiddler, page 16. But all of these little verses, these anthems, are imagery by which Glenn Gould is deciding whether he's living his life correctly or not. He has certain standards. Is he living up to them or not? Okay, page 16. At times, the fiddler stumbled. At times, the fiddler fell. The winds blew and the snow swirled all around him. At times, he guessed his way along the path. We go from 16 to 40. For another segment of the anthem. After that, many pages of thoughts in the mind of Glenn Gould. Throughout the climb, he protected the precious fiddle. He carried it over his shoulder in a sack. Extreme cold, driving rain, brutal sunshine, falling rock. The fiddle had given him ecstasy and pain. Okay, that was 40. We go to page 68. Here we are. The fiddler reached the domain of the god of music. From the summit he could see everything in the world. I have come to make a request, said the fiddler. The god of music listened as the fiddler spoke. Okay, then we go to 96. For the next segment of this anthem. All my life I've been plagued with earthly demons. Let me play my fiddle here on the summit. If I could play for just 1 hour without the demons, I'm sure I could make such music as has never been heard. Okay, and then from 96 we go to 125. Go back down and make your music where you came from. Despite your gifts, you have failed to understand. The demons are the reason for the music. Without the demons, there could be no music at all. And that's the end of the anthem of the fiddler. So a measuring device for Glenn Gould to measure all of the imagery in his mind, the imagery in his mind being made up of the information of his life. Okay, the tree will be the last one I'll read today. Let's go to page 26. Here it is. Okay, first item in this anthem. A boy carved his name in the bark of a tree. Okay, then we go to 52. So 26 to 52 is obviously 26 more pages. Here it is. Years later, the boy returned as a man and ran his fingers over the bark. Then to page 81. His fingers told him the bark had grown and obscured his name. 108. The man was downcast at the boy that he had lost. And then the last one, 137. But not one moment since it was a seed had been lost to the tree. So that's an anthem at the deepest level of Glenn Gould's mind that is telling other elements of Glenn Gould's mind something that's important. You know, here's a standard of measurement. Here's something to keep in mind as you evaluate all the other information of your mind that is now imagery in your mind. Okay. Leaving that aside, though, here's a note that I wrote while reading over this material for this presentation. What's the difference between creative people and non-creative people? Between artistic people and non-artistic people? Well, in my opinion, there is a difference, but it doesn't make the creative artistic person a different kind of person. I'm aware that there are those in the past, or perhaps even in the present, who have seen the great creators, the great artists of the world as almost godlike. There are people who have almost worshipped these human beings as having some sort of special insight into the workings of the world, or even the workings of the cosmos. Well, excuse me here, I'll adjust my page. I don't agree with that concept of the artist. Excuse me. Though I realize that not everyone enjoys watching or reading Shakespearean plays, I realize that not everyone enjoys listening to Beethoven symphonies, I do believe that the Shakespearean plays and the Beethoven symphonies, in fact, all the great works of art, are not about some ethereal world which is inhabited by greater beings than the people I've known and lived among all my life, but are actually about those people, even those who don't particularly care to read or listen to great works of art. I would say that every human being is creative. And my explanation for that statement is as follows. Everyone on earth, at the deepest level of their minds, thinks in imagery. The proof of this is when a person awakens in the middle of the night and realizes that he or she has been having a dream, or perhaps a nightmare, the two are closely allied, which is being presented not in prose statements, but in imagery. Sometimes in unimaginably creative and detailed imagery, sometimes presenting a world which one has not seen, either in a movie or in actual life. So, what is the mind doing when it experiences a dream or a nightmare? Well, what it's doing is creating imagery. Oftentimes out of one's personal life experience. One could be driving one's familiar car, the one that's parked out in the garage or in the driveway, then find that the brakes don't work or the steering wheel doesn't work. And sometimes out of elements. Sorry, lost my place there. Which one has never encountered in one's daily life. As when one is being chased by monsters that no artist has imagined and put on canvas or on a screen. So what the mind is doing is creating works of art. And by works of art, I simply mean that the mind is creating imagery and then arranging that imagery in patterns of potential meaning. The mind is a problem-solving instrument which creates image patterns in order to explore the possible meanings of a topic. So, since all human beings create image patterns at the deepest level of the mind, what is the difference between the average, the ordinary, the everyday human being, the non-creative, non-artistic human being, and those other human beings whom we call creative artists? Well, it's simply this, that the creative artist is able to reach down deep into the subconscious creative mind and bring up imagery from that level of thinking and turn it into a concrete object for all of us to see, explore, enjoy, admire, and even fear. What are these objects? Well, they're sculptures, paintings, poems, plays, movies, novels, and any other items that we call works of art. These works of art are created by those among us who are able to reach down into the subconscious levels of the mind and bring up the imagery of their nightmares and their dreams and turn them into concrete artifacts which we non-artists can then have access to. So, is the artist different from the average person? Yes and no. The average person is an artist in the depths of his or her mind, but not an artist at the conscious level of his or her mind. While the creative artist is an artist at both the deepest levels and the everyday levels of his or her mind. And that is the only difference. All great art is about everyone on earth. Not everyone on earth appreciates this fact, nor cares to participate in the exploration of and the enjoyment of great art, but great art is always about them, nevertheless. So, this is my novel, Glenn Gould, Light and Dark, a novel by John Passfield. It's found on Amazon. You can find more information there. Rocks Mills Press is my publisher's website. You can find information there. My website, johnpassfield.ca, johnpassfield.ca, has 2 books about this novel. One is a notebook, planning and writing. The other is a journal, reflecting on a full rough draft. So have a look. Both are available for free access if you just click on the icon at johnpassfield.ca. Lastly, I'll just say thank you for watching this video.